When my wife and I met, we worked in the same office building. I saw her for the first time when there was a fire in one of the break rooms in the building. I saw her standing outside while we waited for the fire department and walked over to her to flirt with her. I thought she was cute and funny, so I asked her out. We went out together and had an incredible night. By the end of the evening, I was envisioning a life with her. For the first time in my life, I could feel myself really falling in love with someone. We got married about a year after meeting for the first time. I was working in sales when we first met, and she was a secretary. Neither of us went to college, and both of us had always dreamt of going if we ever had the funds to. After working for several years at my job, I realized I didn't need to go to college. I was doing very well on my own, and I was climbing the ladder at work. My wife still wanted to go so she could be a teacher and leave her dead-end job. One day, she came home from work and told me about a new program that her office was offering where they would cover the cost of tuition for employees to study certain things. I assumed it was a continued education program for people who have already been to college to learn new things in their field. She told me that wasn't the case. She would be working full-time, but attending a local community college on nights and weekends. She was mostly taking general education courses, but they had her enroll in some practical business management ones as well. Thankfully, she was only taking 4 classes a semester, and most of them were only once a week. I was still able to see her during the nights on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she had Sundays off completely. It was a lot less than I was used to, but I knew that it was only temporary, and when it was done, she would be happier and feel more fulfilled. About halfway through the semester, she told me that her course schedule had changed, and she would be attending classes Thursday nights. I thought it was very strange because I didn't think class schedules would just change like that. I mentioned that, and she told me that one of the professors had a family emergency and wasn't going to be able to teach at their regular time, so she had to switch to another class. It still didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I didn't have much of a reason to question her story. As far as I was aware, she never lied to me before in the past, so I trusted her. So, on Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I hardly saw my wife. I would say goodbye to her in the mornings, and I would see her again around 9 or 10 in the evening. When she wasn't at work or school, she was at home studying and trying to keep up with her homework. I could see that it was wearing on her. She and I stopped having sex altogether. She was too stressed out from everything going on to even think about it. I tried to tell myself that it was all for the better, but it was frustrating. When she was home, I tried to make things as easy for her as possible. I cooked for her, I made sure the house was tidy, and I offered to help her with studying and homework to make it a little less intensive. It was a Tuesday night, and I was expecting her to be home after work, but she didn't show up. I waited for a little while, just thinking that she was being held up at work and would walk in the door at any minute. But after about an hour of not showing up, I started to worry. I called her several times, and she didn't answer. After about 2.5 hours, she walked in the door like nothing was going on. She didn't understand why I was upset. She swore that she told me she was attending a study session with some other students, but she didn't. We got into an argument about it because she was refusing to believe she did something wrong. We eventually dropped it, and I was just thankful she was all right. Over the next couple of weeks, she attended the same study group that she mentioned that evening. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't annoyed that she was attending it. I had very little time to spend with her, and Tuesday nights were one of the only nights during the week I got to see her. I understood that she wanted to do well in her classes, but it felt very inconsiderate that she was sacrificing the little time we had together to join a study group that she didn't even need. When I would ask her about the group, she was very vague about the details she shared. She didn't even tell me what they were studying for. Around the same time, she was being very secretive with her phone, and it always seemed like she had something to hide. I was starting to get suspicious about what this study group really was. Something in my gut was telling me that she was lying about it and was trying to account for time away from me. I asked her about who she was texting one day, and she told me that it was just the group chat for her study group. I suggested she invite them over for dinner one evening, but she quickly shut that down. She told me that they weren't really friends, just study partners. After a couple more weeks of the same things happening, I needed to get some confirmation that she was being honest. She came home one day and passed out in bed rather quickly. I grabbed her phone and looked through it, just to find some kind of proof that the study group really existed. She specifically mentioned a group chat, but I didn't see any indication that there was one. I saw a few miscellaneous conversations between her and some other students asking about homework or sending links to each other about classwork. Other than that, I saw some messages from coworkers. I clicked through them just to make sure everything was okay, but when I came to her boss, I found something interesting. The messages weren't explicit or anything, but there were a few messages where he was confirming if she was staying late on certain days. Almost all of them were on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My wife would just reply with a thumbs up. I didn't want to say anything until I had a more solid understanding of what was happening. So she went to work the following Tuesday in the morning just as she always did. By this time, I was working from home entirely, so I drove to her office building at the end of the day to get eyes on her. I saw her car in the lot and waited for her to come out to see what was happening. She never came out of the building. After about half an hour of waiting, almost everybody else had gone home for the day. My wife hadn't come out, so I made my way inside to see what was going on. My wife wasn't at her desk, but I could see that her boss was in his office with the lights on. I approached it and listened, hearing some moans and grunting on the other side. It was safe to assume it was my wife with him in there. I didn't interrupt them. Instead, I logged into my wife's work computer and looked through the Slack messages between her and her boss. They were careful enough not to mention anything over text messages on her phone, but they lacked the forethought with their Slack channel. There were dozens of messages where he asked my wife what color her underwear was, asking her to take them off in the bathroom and bring them to him, and so much more. While they were in his office having sex, I took screenshots of the messages and sent them to myself. I waited at her desk for them to come out of the room. They were both surprised to see me. My wife tried to make it seem like nothing was happening. I immediately told her that I wasn't an idiot and I knew that there was something going on, but I had no idea it was her boss. He tried to chime in and tell me that there was no point in overreacting about the situation, but that didn't make me want to punch him any less. My wife just asked me to leave the building with her so she could explain everything to me. I knew that there was no viable explanation for her cheating on me, so I didn't want to hear it. I left without her, but unfortunately, we lived in the same house, so it was difficult for me to avoid her. She cornered me in the kitchen and started explaining it all to me. She had known her boss for a very long time, long before she even met me. He knew how badly she wanted to get out of that job and start a career for herself. When they first met, they had a little bit of a fling in the office, but nothing came of it. He ended up getting married, and aside from a few drunken kisses over the years, nothing ever escalated. He and his wife divorced recently, and he started coming on to her more. At first, my wife shut it down and told him that she was married. But then he told her that he would help her with college tuition if she agreed to keep everything quiet. There was a program at their office for continuing education, but my wife wasn't technically qualified for it. Her boss pulled some strings for her and got her approved. In return, she slept with him. Looking back, he definitely shouldn't have offered that to her. He knew it would have been just tempting enough to get her to do what he wanted. The relationship was coerced from the start, but my wife was still married to me, and she still could have said no. She didn't need to go to college. She wanted to go, and she chose to cheat on me and sleep with her boss to do it. I told her that I couldn't see a way to look past it, and I was going to be looking for a divorce attorney. I grabbed some things, and I left to go stay in a hotel while I figured everything out. I was angry at my wife and her boss for everything they did, and I wanted to get back at them for it. I felt bad being so angry, but she had lied to me for a long time, and it was wrong. I didn't even know that she had been with her boss before all that happened. She had proven to be untrustworthy. I found the Slack messages between my wife and her boss and drafted an email to send to their HR department. I explained everything that my wife told me, and I sent them a copy of the messages. I got a response the following day thanking me for sending the message and promising to launch an investigation. In the middle of the divorce proceedings with my wife, I found out that her boss was fired. My wife still had her job, and I think that was because the HR department was nervous about firing her because her boss was so persistent about sleeping with her. They were probably worried it could be some kind of retaliation against her. However, she did lose the funding for the tuition that she needed to attend college. She was forced to drop out. So, in the end, I ended up divorcing my wife, and she lost everything. She didn't even get to continue going to school after the divorce. Her boss was fired, and the story actually ended up in the local newspaper. When you search his name, the termination is one of the first things that pops up. I know he's going to have a difficult time finding another job now. OP, it seems like you and your wife were working hard to build the life you had before all of this happened. I can tell that you cared about her and really wanted to spend time with her. Instead of being with you, she lied and spent a lot of her time with her boss. I agree, the relationship started in a coercive way. If he knew that she wanted to go to college more than anything, and he could make that happen, he had power over her, and he should never have suggested what he did. It's good that he was fired from that position because he seems like the type of person who wouldn't hesitate to abuse his power again. That being said, your wife should have known better. College isn't a necessity, and she should have realized that what they were doing was wrong. On top of that, she never disclosed to you that she had a previous relationship with her boss. It seems like she kept a lot of things from you during the marriage. Now for our next story. My girlfriend and I had been together for almost 4 years before everything ended. We met casually through some mutual friends when they both invited us to a haunted house attraction for Halloween. Everybody else was there with their partner, so that left us alone a lot of the time. There was a beer garden at the attraction, and she and I ended up separating from the rest of the group to go there. We talked about everything while we hung out. At the end of the night, we exchanged numbers and started dating officially. She moved in with me a year and a half after we started dating. Growing up, I never knew my dad. There had been many times in my life when I wanted to figure out who he was. The story I was told growing up was that he and my mother had been dating when she got pregnant with me. She is a devout Catholic, so the only option was to go forward with the pregnancy. He didn't want that. He tried to encourage my mom to have an abortion, so she told him that she didn't want anything to do with him. She gave birth to me and raised me as a single mother for the first 12 years of my life. Then she met my stepdad, and they had more children after me. No matter how much I asked her to tell me who my father was, she would always refuse. I had eventually resigned to never knowing the truth. It was my girlfriend who convinced me to try and find out again. There was a death in my family. One of my cousins had cancer, and they passed away. That really got me thinking about other illnesses that my family might have. My girlfriend and I went to my mother and approached her about telling me who my father was from that angle. I needed to know if I had a history of any major illnesses in my blood. I also told her that it would be good to know when I wanted to have kids. That was the icing on the cake for her, and she decided to tell me everything. She gave me his name, and I finally reached out to him. He was receptive to meeting me, which I was afraid that he wouldn't be. My girlfriend came with me to the lunch that we had scheduled. It was strange seeing him for the first time, because I could see just how much I looked like him. After everything, it was extremely emotional for me, and I didn't know how to process everything. My girlfriend was there for me, and she comforted me through everything. About a week after our first lunch, my biological father reached out to me again and asked me if I wanted to see him again. Apparently, he felt very bad after our first meeting and had decided he wanted a chance to get to know me. My girlfriend encouraged me to try. I invited her to come along with me because it was difficult for me to do it alone. All three of us went fishing out on his boat, and we had a good time. We drank a few beers, and we all talked. He told me all about his family. He was married and he had 3 kids, much younger than me. He explained that he just wasn't ready to be a father when my mom was pregnant. Before we parted ways for the day, he and my girlfriend exchanged numbers so we could all find time to meet his family. I wanted to meet my half-siblings, and my girlfriend was the organized one between us. A few weeks went by and I hadn't seen him, but we had been texting every so often to keep in touch. My girlfriend told me that they were planning a dinner at the end of the month at my father's house. I work in construction, and I was doing a job where I was about 50 feet in the air when I dropped my phone on concrete. When I looked at it again, it was completely trashed. The screen was virtually untouchable because of the glass. I got a new one as soon as I could and transferred everything over from my old phone. I moved the SATIM card over for a quick transition. There were a few contacts that weren't saved to the SATIM card that I needed to add to the phone again. One of those was my biological father. I got home later that day and my girlfriend was taking a nap on the couch. I needed my father's number so I could let him know that I had a new phone in case he needed to reach out to me. I knew my girlfriend's phone password and I had used her phone countless times before, so I didn't think anything of it when I grabbed it to send myself the contact information. When I clicked on his name in the contacts, I saw a long call history between both of them. It immediately caught my attention because she had never told me they had been having conversations with each other on the phone. I walked into the other room and looked through the message and call log to see exactly what was happening. Their messages began the day that we all went on the boat together. A few hours after they exchanged numbers, my father texted my girlfriend and told her that I was lucky to have her. It started off friendly and she thanked him, saying that she was lucky to have me too. Then my father started getting very flirty with her. He told her how beautiful she was and how if I didn't treat her right, he might have to step in. It was weird to see because I knew that he was married with children. My girlfriend replied and told him that she would be happy to let him step in if needed. From there, other messages were very suggestive. They were always tiptoeing around, overtly saying that they wanted to sleep with each other. It was pretty obvious what was happening, but it didn't seem like it was anything other than flirting until my father sent my girlfriend a picture of himself. It was a nude photo where he told her that a new picture she uploaded to Instagram had really turned him on. My girlfriend told him that she was glad it did, then sent him some other pictures of herself. There were videos and audio recordings and dozens of pictures between them. I clicked on one of the videos that my father sent her. It was him telling her about all the filthy things he wanted to do to her when they finally got together. I could hear kids running around in the background outside of the room he was in. It was clear through the messages that they hadn't actually met to have sex in person yet. They were planning on sneaking away to his boat while everybody was at his house. Before my girlfriend woke up, I put her phone back and pretended like I didn't see anything. I was extremely hurt by everything. My father had known that I existed my entire life and pretended like I didn't. Now that I finally had the opportunity to reach out to him, he betrayed me once again by hitting on my girlfriend. And my girlfriend knew how important it was for me to meet him and decided to sleep with him. I felt massively betrayed by both of them. I knew right away that I wanted to make them suffer for their choices. The dinner was only a week away, so I sucked it up and pretended like everything was fine until then. The day of the dinner, I restrained myself and made it through the meal without lunging across the table to attack my father. I spent a lot of time getting to know my stepmother, and I felt bad for her about everything. Honestly, if he messaged my girlfriend after knowing her for such a short amount of time, I wouldn't have been surprised to find out that he had other affairs in the past. After dinner, we decided to put on a movie and watch it together. My dad said that he wasn't particularly interested in watching the movie, and he had some things that he needed to wrap up on the boat. He excused himself from the movie, and nobody questioned it. About 15 minutes into the movie, my girlfriend said she got a phone call. I didn't see her phone ring or light up. It was her cover to go outside and meet my father. She was gone for about 3 minutes, and I turned to my stepmother and mentioned that it was weird that she had been gone for so long. All of the kids had already fallen asleep on the couch, so I was thankful that I wouldn't disturb them by causing a scene. I told her that I was going to go check on my girlfriend, and she paused the movie to give me a moment. I already knew that I wouldn't see her on the porch, but I looked anyway and went back in, and I told her that she was gone. She was concerned, so she walked outside with me to look for her. She was the one who suggested we go ask my father if he'd seen her, so I followed her to the boat where we both knew he was working on something. As soon as we opened the door to the lower level, we could hear very obvious sex noises. She yelled my father's name, and the sound stopped. It took a minute, but he came to the door of the bedroom and asked her what she needed, like she was disturbing him. She asked him what he was doing, and he told her he was rearranging furniture. I almost wanted to laugh. I asked him if my girlfriend was down there with him, and he tried to say that was ridiculous. I pushed past him and opened the door to find her trying to put her clothes on as quietly as possible. A four-way argument broke out between everybody as everything unfolded. Honestly, even though I had a suspicion that we were going to find out what we did, my reaction was pretty natural. I was hurt, and I was angry, and I let that show. Nobody had any idea that I had almost planned for us to see what we did. My stepmom kicked my dad out of the house that night, and I went back to our apartment to pack a bag and get away. I couldn't be around my girlfriend after what happened. I ended up moving out of the apartment entirely a few weeks later. I found out that my dad had been looking for a place to crash, so my girlfriend invited him there. They were seeing each other for a couple of months, and my girlfriend got pregnant. It seems like my dad had a bit of a pattern in how he went about things. He told her that he already had children, and he was trying to reconcile things with his wife. He couldn't do that if he had another baby in the picture. He tried to deny it, and he even tried to convince her to get an abortion. She didn't want to do that. As soon as I found out what happened, I informed my stepmother about it so she would be aware that he was going to try to lie to her. She thanked me for the information and assured me that she would be staying far away from my father. All of the friends that my girlfriend and I had together were appalled by what she did. They didn't understand how she could sleep with somebody who had such a fragile relationship with her boyfriend, and they thought she was heartless. A lot of them stopped talking to her after everything. She did end up having a child with my father, but he wasn't in the picture. My father divorced his wife and was forced to pay child support and alimony from his paychecks to her. On top of that, because a DNA test proved that he was the father of my ex-girlfriend's child, he was forced to pay child support. I highly doubt he was saving any of his own paychecks. OP, I can't imagine how betrayed you must feel after two people that you should have been able to put some trust in would do this to you, especially considering everything you went through with your father. For him to have abandoned you your entire life and then purposefully betray you is disgusting. Honestly, I think you were better off not knowing him. He seems like a complete dirtbag. Your girlfriend saw how vulnerable you were when you met him and how much it meant to you, and she ruined that. She slept with your biological father after you just found out who he was. That's bad enough as it is without considering that he was married and had children to take care of. Both of their selfishness completely ruined two families. It seems like now they are both living lives that they didn't expect and probably aren't very happy with. They both deserve that and nothing more. Karma really came and got both of them in the end. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.